I'm a design principal. My name's Gabby Hewitt. I started at the company a little over a year and a half ago. If you had to distill this idea of, improving your team, you could actually distill it down to this idea of thinking about when they collaborate, when they take the most time, and that really is in a weekly meeting or a bi-weekly meeting. And so we're going to talk about what are some hacks to improve that meeting time or improve collaboration with your team. When we think about hacks to improve the meeting, we want to think about making the meeting more responsive in 3 buckets. The first, thinking about time as a resource. So how do you chunk out that time in a way where people feel like their time is well spent or it's very valuable? Whether that looks like just having fewer agenda items, maybe it's just 1 or 2 things so you can spend more time digging deeper in a few items. Whether that's, creating an agenda on the fly is a term we use a lot, where multiple people are owners of the agenda and they can bring agenda items forward. Harvard Business Review published a study that Bain & Company did a few years ago where they said the average senior level executive, if you take their 5-day week, 2 of those days are spent in meetings. And so it really becomes important to think about the cost of that meeting. Is that time well spent? Is there, something that those executives could be doing differently? And I think the same could be said for teachers. Another way you could think about improving your team or your meeting time is thinking about making it more responsive. It doesn't have to be rigid. It could be very flexible. So when we use that terminology responsive, we're really just thinking about how do we respond to the needs of our team members. The agenda on the fly, for example, if other people want to contribute agenda items, if you just add one little hack of asking them to also identify how much time they need, what you're going to start to see is just by having that visual in front of them, just by saying, like I said, I needed 5 minutes, people will actually be more concise, they'll measure their words a little bit better, and what you'll do is you'll start to save time to talk about some other agenda items. I think another responsive practice that we use in our own company is getting everyone present. Like, how many times are we all in meetings where we're checking our cell phone or we're checking our email, and really our mind is somewhere else. So we practice something called a check-in and a check-out. A few years ago, Google did a study called Project Aristotle, and really what they were trying to do is just find out what does it take to be an effective team. They had a bunch of hypotheses, whether it's the people who you recruit to be on your team, whether it's the time of day you meet, but in the end what they realized, it was literally just this space for people to feel comfortable in sharing their ideas, and that whatever their ideas were, they weren't going to be batted down. They might get critical feedback, but it didn't in any way see their contribution as less valuable. And so when we're thinking about creating space for innovation, innovation only happens when you have multiple people willing to be vocal in that meeting time. And so as much as possible, it's important if you're a meeting facilitator or if you're a team leader to think about what is a way to draw other voices into the mix. And by sharing those ideas, you're probably going to have 99 ideas that don't lead to any kind of fruition, but it does give you more at-bats to create a more innovative practice. So I think the last recommendation that I would have that I know we practice here at Education Elements is this idea of defining the work before we actually define the people involved. We list out what are the roles and the accountabilities that we need to make a project successful before we say, here are the 3 leaders that we need to be a part of this project plan. And so if you think about your projects in terms of roles and accountabilities versus people, what you'll start to do is you'll start to open up opportunities for people at your company, which is going to lead to higher happiness, higher staff retention. And the other thing is it's going to lead to more innovation. You're not going to be limiting yourself to a set department or a set team. You're actually going to be saying, here's a project that we have, who has the passion, who has the capacity, who has the interest to be a part of this. And from there, they actually also have very clear roles. And so they know I'm not coming in as, Gabby, the design principal. I'm coming in as, the subject matter expert. So my entire purpose for being on this team is to create content that I could then turnkey to my team. And so if you want to continue the conversation, I feel like you can reach out to anyone on our team. Find me on Twitter, find Education Elements. We would love to talk more about this and share more about our experience and also learn from you.